Yes. Really? What were you talking about? Yes. Right. Yeah. Amazing.
Guys, can I get one more? You guys are breaking. One more you wait, okay?
Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me? Yes. Okay, amazing. Good morning. It's going to do one more selfie. Okay, let's do this. We do work in social media. Amazing. Well, is there a little, is that good? We can hear? Okay, amazing. Well, good morning, everyone. We are so excited to have you here for this breakout session. Up here on stage, we have a group of people who reach over 30 million more people every day on social media who are truly, taking part in the battle online against anti-Semitism, misinformation, Jew hatred, and I think something that's really important to note before we go over to them is the people we're speaking to, and I'm going to be speaking today in front of you, are not just preaching to the choir. You know, the audiences that, the three of you reach, there are obviously many Jewish followers, but many people who aren't Jewish as well, and I think that's incredibly important, and something that we're going to talk about today is, obviously, this is a friendly room, and, I hope everyone here loves Jews and loves Israel. Yes, I assume. But I think truly the important work is being able to reach those who either don't have their minds made up or want to learn more. And so that's something that's incredibly impactful. So I think let's start out with just doing a little round of intros in case anyone here lives under a rock and doesn't know who the three incredible women in front of us are. Do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hi, I'm Debbie, also known as Roots Metals on Instagram. I became a Jewish activist / educator on Instagram by accident. It was originally my small business account, and I will never change the name because I'm attached. But yeah, I essentially educate about Jewish history and anti-Semitism on Instagram.
It does a great job at it.
Thank you.
Miriam?
Hi, my name's Miriam Ezagui, and thanks. I also accidentally fell into this role of a social media presence. I am a wife, mom, and labor and delivery room nurse, and 2 years ago, I started sharing online how I wrap my baby in a woven wrap, and I was really afraid to identify as a Jewish person on social media because I knew the amount of hatred that we could get in a digital platform, and I didn't want that. I was afraid. But it was when Whoopi Goldberg came out with that statement that the Holocaust was not about race, was not about race, but two groups of white people. That was the first post that I identified as a Jewish person and spoke out because two of my own grandparents are Holocaust survivors, and that is how I started sharing my life as an Orthodox Jew. So I educate about anti-Semitism, and I share my day-to-day life.
Hi, my name is Ariel Martin. I started social media when I was 14 years old on an app called Musical.ly. Yes, I love Musical.ly. I started making lip-syncing videos online, and I gained a following, and from there I started posting on all social media platforms, and since then I've gotten more into acting. But the thing with my platform is I never really spoke about being Jewish. I was just posting about, I was making lip-syncing videos and posting about my life and posting about my family. And since October 7th, that's when I, realized that not enough people were speaking up, and this speaks to me and to my family, and I had to. For me, there was no other option. But like we're going to talk about today, we have, I think, all been met with such a massive amount of hate, which is so disheartening and sad and heartbreaking. And yeah, that's me.
Thank you. I figured I should introduce myself in case you're wondering who this guy is up here with these strong, powerful Jewish women. My name is Eitan Bernath. I am a chef, cookbook author, and entertainer. I work on television on The Drew Barrymore Show. I do cooking content across the various interwebs, and also try to use my platforms to be an advocate against anti-Semitism and for positive Jewish representation. And I'm a big fan of the ADL. Thank you. So I want to start this off by talking about life before October 7th. You know, October 6th, you know, I kind of think about life before October 7th and after as reminds me kind of like COVID. There was life before March 2020 and life after. I want to hear from each of you, what was, and I know Ariel, you touched on this a little bit, what was your experience like as a Jew on social media in the public eye before October 7th, in terms of, was it something that you made a big part of your platform? Was it something you got hate for? What type of hate did you get? Let's start with that. Let's just back up. Do you want to?
Oh, yes. Okay, so before October 7th, I really hadn't posted about being Jewish, not because I didn't I'd post here and there about, you know, like my Shabbat dinners and Hanukkah. But I had gained a following from lip syncing online, so it wasn't something, I never thought to bring it up. And to be honest with you, I lived in this little bubble of, you know, my family is Jewish. I had friends who weren't Jewish, but who were very supportive of me being Jewish. Like I didn't think about it. And I started getting hate when I was, I think, 14 years old. So, but all of the hate I had gotten was very superficial and surface level. Like the most people would say is, you know, they didn't like my nails, or they didn't like my acne, or they didn't like my hair. And so I was able to brush it off. And then post October 7th, when I started posting online, it was, I think, the first time for me that I had really put who I deeply was out there onto the internet, thinking, of course, if, you know, I'm being honest and real and showing who I am online, then I'll be met with love, right? I'll be met with people being like, okay, that's really, you know, we get to learn more about Ariel. And instead it was, you know, such an insane amount of hate. And I think for me too, the one thing that was really striking and awful was before October 7th, I had here and there posted about, you know, how I feel that, you know, women have the right to choose what they do with their bodies, how we should believe all women. I post about lifting up the voices of minorities. I posted about, you know, LGBTQ rights. I post about trans rights. And every single time before October 7th, I was met with love. And I was met with people saying, thank you for using your voice. And so October 7th, when that happened, and to me, I wasn't posting anything different. I was posting the same things that I'd always put. I'd post about how, you know, we need to believe women. We need to raise voices of minorities. And for some reason, you know, then suddenly I was met with such an enormous amount of hate. And that's when it stood out to me that the one difference before and after was that these people were Israeli, that these people were Jewish. And that is just not okay.
Yeah, it's truly, I think a lot of people use the word double standard. It's like it's just, there's no double standard, it's just us. Also, before Miriam, you speak, I also want to mention, if you open the Never Is Now app, you can submit questions the last 15 minutes, and if I feel like whipping out my phone earlier, we'll ask some audience questions. So make sure to submit those on the app.
So my content really didn't change before or after October 7th. I have always represented myself as an Orthodox Jewish woman. If you've watched any of my videos, I oftentimes say, hi, my name's Miriam, and I'm an Orthodox Jew. before I intro into whatever I'm talking about, so that people know whether you've been on my channel for many, many weeks and months, or if this is the first time you're seeing a video of mine, people know who I am. And that is how I presented myself. And as Ariel had said, when I have always stood up for any minority group, and I have been an ally to other ones. As a Jewish woman, I have spoken out about anti-Semitism to raise more awareness, and what I was met with pre-October 7th was usually a lot of shock from the community. That people, one time I responded to a comment where they told me to get into the oven. And I did like a reply to that comment video, and the shock that people had that somebody would say that to me was what was the overwhelming feel of the comments. Now, it's like it's accepted, and people will defend the comments. Well, it's because of X, Y, and Z that's happening in the world that I'm getting that comment, which is wrong. Nobody should get those comments ever, period, end of story. Or that I'm complaining too much, or that everything today is anti-Semitic. And it's just very apparent that other types of hatred are not accepted. But when it comes to Jewish people talking about the hatred we experience, we are silenced.
So I've been posting about anti-Semitism since 2020. And the way that this happened was, like I said, it was like my small business account. And my followers were mostly artists and kind of people, you know, creative people, generally left-leaning. And after George Floyd was murdered, they were very, very vocal about that, as they should have been. And, you know, also in 2020, when the pandemic started and everyone was locked down in their homes and bored, everyone sort of became an activist online. And I saw how my community would speak up for this issue and that issue and whatever issue. And then, I can't remember what it was, people always ask me, don't remember it, but something happened to the Jewish community, and I was expecting people to say something, and no one said anything. And so I went on a rant in my stories, and the rant went viral, and that is how I started my journey. But before October 7th, I was talking about this for over 3 years. And just because of the nature of what I was talking about, I got a lot of hate, or what I thought was a lot of hate.
Just wait.
Yeah. But something that really shifted on October 7th was that people who had been following my work for years had been telling me that I taught them so much, had been sharing my posts, all of a sudden turned on me on October 7th. And of course it wasn't, you know, most people, but it was kind of a significant number of people. And that was really, really, really hurtful because I hadn't changed. I mean, I think we've all changed since October 7th, but you know, what I was saying hadn't changed. I was more emotional, but I was saying the same things. You know, my positions have been consistent, and it was pretty shocking, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I think beyond just the obvious literal loss that the Jewish community went on October 7th, I think the loss of allyship that we thought we had was a whole other grieving process in itself. And now, something that I know I experienced, I know I've spoken to all three of you about, has been the platforms. So social media platforms are not legally liable for the content that is distributed on them and basically anything that happens. And so there's not a lot of incentive legally for the platforms to take it that seriously beyond just kind of lip service or enough to keep the media to stop, going down their throats and to stop Congress from trying to pass bills like there's actually one being voted on this week. I have definitely felt, I know some of you have felt, or all of you have felt, but I want to hear your takes on this, how the platforms have failed Jewish creators since October 7th. And frankly, this is important to speak about because if Jewish creators can receive hate, death threats, and everything that comes with speaking about Israel and speaking about anti-Semitism, then any group of people can. There are safety features built into the platforms, whether that's comment filters, whether that's direct message filters, whether that's a basic filter of maybe if someone writes, I will find you on the streets of New York City and kill you, maybe that shouldn't go through. Crazy idea. The platforms have definitely failed Jewish creators. I know Miriam, I believe Ariel also were on a letter that was published to TikTok after October 7th that I helped lead, calling out the platform. How have you experienced a failure from these platforms? What safety features or lack thereof have you been, wishing worked? Do you want to start?
So I'm going to go back a few years, pre-October 7th, when Musical.ly was just turning into TikTok. When I was with Musical.ly, or not with doing Musical.ly, I had done a few anti-bullying campaigns with Musical.ly. I had just done a few music campaigns, any kind of campaign. If I wanted to do a campaign, we would go to Musical.ly, we'd have a discussion, and they were like, amazing, let's do it, and in an hour we could do it. So I was working with an organization at the time, and still working with, called Combat Anti-Semitism, who are incredible, and we wanted to do a campaign online about anti-Semitism. Okay, amazing. So we went to TikTok, just like we had always done, and they pushed us along to the next person, and we're like, what is going on? And they kept pushing us along to the next person, pushing us along, and not only were they not receptive, they were just not kind, and they did not want to do it. And so we decided, okay, on our own, we're going to start posting, we're going to just do the campaign on our own. In an hour, it was taken off the internet. So that for me, since then, it's okay, they don't have they're not willing to do anything. And it's hard, especially now, because I know, and I'm trying to understand, but I really can't. When people are commenting watermelon emojis, let's say, I know it's hard to filter every single one, but what they are able to do is create campaigns. What they're able to do is create positive campaigns. Maybe you can't delete every single comment, but you are able to come together and make some kind of campaign, promote a Jewish song, promote an Israeli song, make sure you push our content onto the For You page. There's ways to support and uplift, and that's where I feel incredibly left alone.
Amen to that.
So I have seen a difference from platform to platform. On TikTok, it is kind of like the Wild West out there. The way that other content creators can take a video of mine and stitch it and reword it, or take a very small portion and misrepresent what I'm saying and then send a tremendous amount of hate is just uncharted. And I have seen this time and time again, for simply saying that I'm a Jewish person that supports Israel, because that is so terrible. On Instagram, I'm going to actually read something to you guys off of my phone, because this actually happened 2 weeks ago. I receive a lot of hate mail, death threats, sometimes very specific things. And part of what I do is to raise awareness to that. So this person said to me, "Fun fact, I hate Jews. You all have this evil look radiating from your eyes. It's scary." And then the vomiting emoji. So I reposted this comment, and Instagram took it down and flagged it as hate speech, and they demonetized my account. So they will not protect me from receiving hate speech, but if I speak out against it, they will penalize me. So that's just a little behind, and I don't speak about this on social media. There's a few other things. Do you want me to share about like real life experiences now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, that's our next question, but yeah, you can.
I can wait.
Yeah, we could jump.
So the other thing that I do not speak about online is how hate messages that I've received online has translated into real life hate. And I've had to contact the FBI over the amount of hate that I've received, not just online, but actual threats where my address got out, my husband's telephone got out, people doxed my parents trying to get information about me. Somebody posted a video on TikTok doxing my parents, their phone numbers, and they had people calling them asking for my information. We had one time over 5 different fast food deliveries sent to our home address with my husband's cell phone number as the callback to pay. And this is also a hate crime because we keep kosher and they were sending us non-kosher food to our house. So this is some, because I represent myself as a Jewish person online, hate that I've received in my real life.
So regarding social media platforms, I'm only on Instagram. That's like more than enough for me. I'm like the worst social media person. I hate it. But I've had a similar experience to Miriam because I do posts about Jewish history and stuff. A lot of my posts include images of Nazis or swastikas or whatever, which is within the community guidelines. Like, you're allowed to use this imagery for educational purposes. But Instagram doesn't think so as far as my account is concerned. And so these things not only get taken down, but my account is flagged. I have people who just mass report my account, like just go through every single post and report it, which got my account actually taken down at one point. So definitely stuff like that. An experience I had recently, actually, and this one was hard because the person essentially made an account that looked like mine, but wasn't me, but they put parody in the name. And so Instagram, like parody accounts are accepted. And so what this person would do is they would make posts that looked like mine, that were horribly racist, or go into people's comment sections and say racist things so that it looked like it was me. And I had such a hard time getting that taken down because of the parody thing in the account. So it's stuff like that like it's just so frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the mass reporting I know is something else I know, Miriam, you've experienced. Before we go on to the next topic, just a reminder, I see some of the questions coming in, but if at any point you have a question, please submit it on the Never Is Now app. I think the next thing that Miriam touched on that I want to hear, I want to speak a little bit about and want to hear some of your perspectives on is the real world effects of this. Something that I try to be vocal about is when you work in social media in the public eye, you're used to receiving hate. You know what you're signing up for. I started working in entertainment when I was 11. got used to getting bullied at school as a kid, online. You get a thick skin when this is your job. When you put yourself out there to millions of people, not everyone's going to like you. But since October 7th, there's been such an increase in the threat to physical safety of Jewish creators. And this is something I think that's important to highlight, is it's not just words. These words have real world effects. For myself, anecdotally, following October 7th, I received, as the three of you and kind of all Jewish creators, hundreds and hundreds of death threats. And as a Jewish creator online, you do receive these. This is part of being a Jew in the public eye. But the intensity, the frequency, the volume, and the specificity was something that had never been seen before. I live here in Manhattan, in New York City, and messages of, I know where you live, I will find you on the street and kill you. When I see you, I will shoot you. Very, very, very specific threats. And this isn't something I post too much about just because I didn't want to add fuel to that fire, but there was a period of time where I had to hire armed security if I was leaving my apartment. I did not really leave my apartment. I was wearing sunglasses and a face mask and covering to not be identifiable if I left my apartment for a while. I went to a rally in Times Square and had a bit of a security incident. Luckily I had a security guard with me where there was someone who kind of approached. There are very real world effects to this. We've seen this at Jewish institutions. I did a panel a few days ago here with Mike Salmanov, Einat Admoni, and some other chefs, and we spoke about the anti-Semitic attacks / protests, whatever you want to call them, at Jewish eateries, whether that's graffiti at a Jewish eatery, whether that's attacking the staff. These real world effects are happening to Jews all across the world, and that's what I want to hear. For you three, have there been any firsts? Obviously being a Jew in public eye, I'm sure October 7th and since is not the first time you've received a death threat, but Miriam, I know for you with the delivery of non-kosher food to your house as a openly Orthodox Jewish woman, obviously is a disgusting hate crime. But for the two of you, have there been any firsts in that arena?
So I've actually been doxxed twice before October 7th. One time was by a QAnon person, and that was really scary. But thankfully, that hasn't happened since. I'm waiting for it to happen. But I do feel just a significant change to how I perceive my safety. Like, I'm nervous. I really am. And I don't want to say these things online because it just adds fuel to the fire. It gives people ideas. But it does feel like destabilizing. Like, you just get such wild messages that you're like waiting for it to translate to real life, and that's kind of like a really scary position to constantly be in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Same. I haven't been doxxed. I think that's horrifying. And yeah, just an overall being scared to go outside, being scared to go outside alone. And like you said, like I don't really speak about it online because I think for all of us, it's like we're trying to be strong and try to just keep going and push through because, if I sit there and I stop posting and then I don't know I don't want that message to be spread to the rest of the world. And yeah, just being sent death threats all the time. And in terms of, my personal life, I have lost friends over it. And every time I post, I am really intentional with what I post. I try to make it, just about uplifting Jewish voices, just about, spreading awareness about anti-Semitism, which should not be controversial. And so when I lose friends over things like that, when one of my boyfriend's friends refuses to come to my house, that when I've met him many times before and we've been very nice, and all of a sudden, I come out and he finds out I'm Jewish, and it's like, okay, no, I'm, refuse to go to your house. That's a problem. And that's why I think I'm so angry with, the platforms and just everything going on online, because, I think it's affecting us. But I think about, a 10-year-old Jewish kid who goes online and who sees hate and death threats under every other Jewish creator's posts, and I'd be horrified. So something has to change, and it's awful.
Yeah. I want to pause my pre-planned questions to ask a question from the audience. We have a question from Max Bray. Where's Max? Oh, hi, Max. Max asked a great question I think is important to speak about. We've spoken a lot about anti-Semitism, combating anti-Semitism, hate against our Jewish identity. Max asks, a huge part of our Jewish identities is Zionism. Can you speak about how you've tried to combat anti-Zionist rhetoric? And I think this is something important also to highlight. When it comes to speaking about October 7th, about anti-Semitism, there's kind of two parts, I think, to it. There's, us just talking about being proud Jews, and there's, of course, our support for Israel as Jews. And Zionist online, people try to turn into this evil, bad word when, I proudly identify as a Jewish American Zionist, as I'm sure many, if not hopefully all of you in the room do as well. And very specifically, there's something that only applies to Israel is simply supporting the existence of the only Jewish state on earth means online in a arena that absolutely hates nuance, that you support every single action of every single person in the military, every single individual soldier, everything that they ever do, you support if you simply support its existence. And that isn't applied to anyone else. No one would ever go up to a Chinese content creator and comment holding them accountable for what the Chinese government is doing to the Uyghur Muslim population. Could you imagine how absolutely, let's take being Jewish out of this. Imagine someone commented on a openly, proudly Chinese person's account celebrating Chinese New Year. How dare you proudly support your Chinese identity because of what the government's doing? That's absurd. Yet that is done every single day to Jewish content creators, and simply saying that let's not even say, even if you don't even say that you're a Zionist, let's say you just were upset online on October 7th, on October 8th, before Israel responded in any military capacity, you were called a dirty Zionist, a genocide supporter, everything that is listed by those people. And so I want to hear your perspectives on this very issue and how you navigate that. I think all four of us are very intentional. Anyone with a heart is upset about what's happening to the civilians in Gaza and what is happening to Palestinians. But on the internet, it's very all or nothing. It's either you support Israel's right to exist or Israel should be blown off the face of the earth. And so I think all three of you, and I know I try to be very intentional about the words we use to speak about Israel, to speak about Zionism, to speak about the war that's going on. I would love to hear your perspectives on this, how you navigate that, how you speak about not only your Jewish identity, but being a Zionist and your support for Israel.
I guess I'll go since that is my area. I think that the best way to dispel misinformation and disinformation is with information, and not just information, but well-sourced information. And I have a very rigorous personal job. Thank you.
If any of you, incredibly well-sourced, yes, very good information.
I have a very rigorous, personal process as to how I cite things, but just because I feel like that's my best defense is information. And so with the topic of Zionism and anti-Zionism specifically, I know a lot of people don't agree with this approach, but I feel like the word has been so it's been through the ringer. And to the point where I feel like if you're talking to someone who's hostile, it's just like a conversation blocker. Yeah. It just doesn't go anywhere. And so I'm like, okay, let's put the word aside for a minute and talk about values, because most often than not, we have shared values. And then I will explain to them how those values apply to my values, one of which is Zionism. I also, like I said, I think information is the best way to dispel disinformation. And so I will say, okay, I feel like a lot of Jews and Zionists are very wary of talking about the bad things that Israel has done. And I don't think that's helpful. I don't think it's honest. And so I will be like, okay, so you're talking to me about this thing that happened. Let's talk about this. Oftentimes, there is a long context that they're not understanding as to why something happened. Doesn't mean that what happened was excusable, but they will have their whole perspective on what Zionism is clouded by a certain incident. And so that's what I do. The other thing that I think is really, really important to talk about is the history of how the word Zionism was slandered, because that gives people a lot of perspective. I think that, other people that are better experts than me have talked about this forever. One of the main, just Propaganda 101 is kind of obfuscating the meaning of words. Words don't mean anything anymore. And so I try to talk about that as well. I think it's really important if we're having a conversation about Zionism, most often than not, we're not even talking about the same thing. So I feel like we have to get a baseline as to okay, this is what Zionism is. Let's talk about it from that perspective. And I'm saying this is what it is because this is how Zionists have defined Zionism. So I believe that people in a movement are the ones that get to define what it is. So yeah, those are the things that I do, and many, many times people are just not open to hearing it. And you also have to learn when it's worth engaging and when it's not. You can't talk to a brick wall. You have to talk to the people who actually have an interest in having the conversation.
Definitely.
Pre-October 7th, I really didn't speak so much about Zionism on my channel. I've always educated very strongly about anti-Semitism. But after October 7th, I just saw, like you said, that it was the word Zionism online is like a dirty word. And I saw a lot of people saying, I don't hate Jews, just Zionists. I'm sorry, any kind of hatred is wrong. So I made a post about that, and it went viral. And it didn't just go viral, it got stitched, and so many people, if you were to search my name as a hashtag after that, my name trended 20 million times. Because I spoke out saying that hating Jews and hating Zionists were one and the same thing. And what that is doing by saying that, using Zionism as a dirty word and saying that people hate Zionists, is it is dehumanizing. It is dehumanizing us, and that is the root of how the Holocaust happened. Because they are dehumanizing us as a nation, and they are justifying our hate. Because X, Y, and Z, Zionist, gives me a reason to hate. And that is wrong.
So first I want to say how thankful I am just to be able to hear that, because to be honest, I think for me, having, started really posting after October 7th, I'm still figuring out and still navigating, and I feel like for a lot of people, how to post online and how to actually get through to people, because I don't feel like anything is working most of the time. And I feel like any angle that, I try to address things, it doesn't really work. The other day, I made a video the other day, and I it's because I saw a video of a girl crying. She happened to be Jewish, of a girl crying because she saw Orthodox Jews on a train, and she said in the video how she wanted them to get away from her. And she wondered what they felt about Israel. And I was like, what, are you absolutely kidding me? You saw people and you assumed what they felt. You wanted them to get away from you just because of the way they look. That is like disgusting. That is hate. That is awful. And then I went to the comments and I saw there were 7,000 plus comments praising this girl. And I was like, what are you talking about? So I made a video talking about how, I can't help you change your mind about Israel, but I hope everybody sees this, and this is anti-Semitism, literally, like basic, just anti-Semitism. You can't, you see a group of Jews and you want them to get away from you. That is awful. And I was met with, I have never experienced hate in my life like I had experienced from posting that video. And I don't know where I was going with that. Let me just think about it for a second. But I say all that to say, okay, so then I was receiving comments about how this other person was a good Jew, and she's actually Jewish because she is an anti-Zionist, and real Jews are anti-Zionists. And that was literally 2 days ago, and so I'm still navigating and figuring out, okay, how, I really don't know how to talk to people, but I think like Debbie said, it's about, not bringing up that word, because now people have just an awful idea of that word, which is awful, their idea of the word, and I think we need to figure out, together, hopefully, a way to combat it, because it's just the normalization of words, and I said this in the video, around Jews now and around people who support Israel, and about anybody who's just speaking up after October 7th, who believe in Israel's right to exist. The word usage is disgusting and normalized in a way that prior to October 7th, if we spoke about these things about any other group of people, it'd be like, we can't, like we're in a world where everybody is so specific about language and making people feel comfortable and wanting people to be heard, and which are all very good things. So why, when talking about Jewish people and about Zionists and about Israelis, are those things somehow not applied? It doesn't make sense, and I just am thankful to have heard what you guys had to say.
Thank you for sharing your perspectives on that. So in our last 10, 11 minutes, I want to focus on optimism. How are we looking forward? I think since October 7th, there's been, of course, immense grief in the Jewish community and immense sorrow about what's happened in Israel and continues to happen with the hostages and the war. But there's also been a incredible unity that I described it as I feel like now if I see a random Jewish person on a plane, I'm like, can I just give you a hug? The unity has been so intense, and even specifically in the entertainment industry, anti-Semites love to say that we control the media, which if we do, we're doing an awful job. I must say, we are awful at doing that, if that's something we do. But even in entertainment, many would probably assume that everyone who's Jewish in entertainment knows each other. We did not until October 7th. We now do. I want to hear, one of the questions, the kind of the highest voted question in the Q&A, which kind of cues into my last question, is, we'd love to hear about what makes you optimistic moving forward. What makes you wake up every day despite the hate you get in your day-to-day life, online? What keeps you going every day? The person who asked a question, I don't see it. Oh, it's an anonymous question. Okay. Someone in here asks, what advice do you have for students on social media who see a lot of hate from their classmates and have to attend school the next day? And I think to expand Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous question, our jobs online and in the public eye are important. We reach millions of people trying to, change their minds, educate them. But I think the most important conversations happen person to person. And our work's important, but I think for those of you in the audience, truly just having those difficult conversations, I think the smaller the audience, the more impactful you can be. And so how do each of you think everyone in the audience in their own lives can use, whether their Instagram account has 10 followers, 100 followers, 200 followers, whether they have an audience of one at a meal with a coworker of theirs, a friend of theirs, how can they make an impact themselves?
I think that, first of all, you don't have to subject yourself to abuse. You really have to, like, you can choose to opt out of that conversation. People, like, you don't have an obligation to have a conversation with someone who's being hateful. At the same time, I want to tell you that it's also important to give people time to come around. This has happened to me so many times, where I had like a full-on argument with someone online. Maybe I blocked them, maybe they blocked me, I don't know, but I just kept doing my thing, and a year later, they emailed me to apologize. And it's happened a lot. And I think that people can be very resistant to seeing that they've done something wrong. But if you're just doing your thing, you know, like, people will come around. At the same time, obviously don't, you know, like, wait around. But I think most people mean well. I really do. So, yeah, I don't really know where I was going with that, but yeah.
I think that's very true. I think it's a very polarizing issue, but like you spoke about earlier, coming together with a person who maybe you disagree on Israel with, or saying about the war, any of the topics we just discussed, and coming together and see what you agree on. I think usually with most level-headed, you know, fully developed adults,
these days,
hopefully, yeah, or enough, you will a compassionate human, you will agree on more than you disagree.
So I just wanted to say, if you are on a college campus and I just want to give you a big hug, because
yes.
it's rough out there right now, but your safety and security is number one. Don't feel that you need to speak out if it means that your mental or physical safety is at risk. That's the first thing to check. When I mentioned previously, and if you do feel comfortable, please go ahead having a conversation. These are like small group, like you said, conversations really do a lot. I mentioned before that I had to contact the FBI over death threats and real life threats that I received. And you know what the FBI told me? They told me they can't do anything unless an actual physical, like somebody showed up to my house with like a gun or a knife happened. So I had to reflect on my safety and my family's safety. When people send me death threats, they don't just send me death threats to me. They'll target my kids. So my husband and I like sat down and we had a conversation about what we were comfortable putting out online. Now, I have always been an advocate for anti-Semitism. Prior to October 7th, I was not an advocate as a Zionist. I stand with Israel. I have visited Israel. I have told stories about it, but there are other accounts that have done an amazing job being extremely vocal. That's not what my platform was. And what the FBI told me was the only thing that they could suggest that I do was stop posting. And I said I wasn't going to do that. I'm going to continue posting my regular content about my life as an Orthodox Jew and educating about anti-Semitism, because I am not going to let those voices silence me. Thank you. Another little tidbit that I just want to share is that this is something my father said to me. He says it's really hard to make people change the way they think. But if you can tell a story and you give them a feeling, they'll remember that. And that's what I do with a lot of my videos and posts, is that they tell stories and you're left with a feeling. And so that's why I post what I do.
I'll say before coming here, I literally 2 days ago was crying to my mom because I was like, I feel so alone. I don't have too many Jewish friends. All of the friends who I thought were my friends don't want to be my friend anymore. And I go online and I see thousands and thousands of people wanting me to die. And so I was like, I think like all of us, I'm assuming, in this room felt like incredibly alone. And now after coming here, it's seeing people in person who have been feeling the exact same way, who have come up to me and said, thank you. First of all, you have no idea how much that means to me. And I think that's something I really want to take in my day-to-day life, and maybe that's one thing that we can all take in our day-to-day lives, even if it's not on social media. Well, I do think on social media, if you want to, like, there's small ways to do things, and your activism doesn't have to look like everybody's activism. You don't have to sit here and post 1 million videos a day. Like, you do, like, you know, in regards to safety, obviously, to think about those things, obviously, but do what makes you feel comfortable. Whether it is online, you know, follow a Jewish creator, follow an Israeli creator. You have no idea how much, I'm telling you, I think for all of us, we get so many awful comments. So like, follow a Jewish friend, and in your day-to-day life, if you do Shabbat dinners, like, invite someone to a Shabbat dinner. You know, go to temple if you want to, and if you go to temple, invite a friend to go to temple with you. Just because everybody is going to make a different impact, but everybody's impact is so important. So find a way that works for you. And if that means not doing anything with other people and just sitting in your room and thinking about being Jewish or learning about Jewish history, whatever that is, it matters so much right now. So don't take yourself out of the race just because you don't want to go on social media, or you don't want to go to temple. That's so understandable. We're all feeling it. You know, just do what makes you feel comfortable, and I think that's what matters.
Yeah, I think saying also a question that came up here that we could touch on for 1 second. We have like 1 more minute. That Ariel, you touched on is, you know, if you don't feel comfortable on your own platform to, you know, speak about these topics, whether that's for your safety, whether that's for you don't need a reason. Like, there's no, you know, every Jewish person, every person, as you said, should do what feels right to them, is just support Jewish businesses, Jewish creators. A question that came in, which is actually something, there was an article in Adweek about last week, is basically like, have you seen a decrease in work/brand partnership opportunities since October 7th? And it is a thing. You know, I don't know a single Jewish content creator or public figure who has not had a significant decrease in the work that they get. And it's something I think people don't talk online because, you know, you don't want to be the complaining content creator. But, you know, the creators you follow have businesses, have employees, have people that rely on them. And so I think if the littlest thing you could even do is just, you know, comment something positive. You know, the brands that support and allow people like Miriam and Ariel and myself and Debbie to do this need to see that support among a sea of hate right now. And so no action is too small for you to do in your personal life. Support, even a nice message if you don't want to comment it, really goes a far way. You know, in between the you should die, all Zionists are evil, a nice little keep going goes a long way.
A little blue heart.
Yeah. But yes, thank you so much, the three of you, for sharing your perspectives. This is so important. Thank you all so much for listening. Your presence here today means so much, and hope you have a great rest of your day.